So we've gone over a little bit about why t-shirts exist, why I love t-shirts and the power of a tee. Now let's talk about how the damn ink gets on the actual cotton shirt. Let's talk about how these things are made. Let's talk about process a little bit. So everyone wants to own great t-shirts. Everyone wants to make great t-shirts, but how do you even begin doing it? And I think obviously in this day and age, you can Google it, have somebody do it for you, you can take care of it, and farm it out. But I think better designers and great designers, what I've found is that they actually understand how it happens from a mechanical level. So I'm going to talk through that with you. The first way and the most popular way, the most sort of utilitarian way is obviously silk screening. This is essentially a silk screen. Okay, you've got a wood frame with what is called the silk part of the silk screen in the middle stretched out. So it's like a canvas. Before the design is actually on it, this whole thing is clean. Okay, so you've got your design on paper. You would probably then bring the paper sketch design into a digital form using like Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop. And then you get a film made out of that artwork. So you can take the piece of art that you've made, like this that I've made, and you could bring it to a place and they'll make a film. So a film is essentially a clear cell with your film, with your artwork in black on that clear cell. What they do is they put this coating, and it's called emulsion. It's like this goop that goes all over this thing, right? And then you put your film on it, and then they shoot the screen with a really bright light. Depending on the screen, depending on the type of artwork, the bright light just essentially bakes the art into the emulsion. When they then spray off all of the emulsion, they wash the entire screen off, and they clean it all off. What will be left is your artwork will literally be burned into this screen. And this is the negative space. So everything that wasn't artwork, this is all covered essentially. This is like a stencil, if you can imagine. And this is like see-through. Now, when you've laid this down onto a surface, like a piece of cotton, you put your silk screen ink over here, and then they have what's called a squeegee. Squeegee is essentially like a hard piece of rubber with a wooden handle. So this could act like in fact, this would probably actually work as a squeegee. So you just put a dollop of ink there. You put it down where you want it on the shirt or the fabric, and then you basically, once you do this, the ink will stop where it's blue, and where it's clear, the ink goes through and sits down on the t-shirt. Then you lift this up, and actually you have to actually flood it again. So you do this, and then you push it back like that, so you get a second hit, and then you lift it up, and then the design will appear on the shirt. And that's basically how you get the design onto the cotton. Now, after it's onto the cotton, you have to bake the ink into the cotton. If you don't do that, the first wash, you have a blank shirt again. So what happens after that is they run it through a dryer. They basically take the shirt, lay it down on this flat dryer, and then it goes through kind of like what you see at Burger King, like where burgers get made. This shirt goes through a dryer for a couple minutes, and then when it comes out, it's baked in. And that's really why I think silk screen shirts have stood the test of time. It's also important to note that for each color of your design, you need one of these screens. So one color per screen. So if you have a piece of artwork that's got 7 different colors on it, you need 7 of these in order to make that. In fact, if you're doing a photo print, photo prints are often made up of 4 colors. So it gets pretty technical, but CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and K is for black. Those 4 colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, can make all colors in the visible spectrum. Mind-blowing. But so if you want a photo print where, a photo of a sky or a sunset, it's got like millions of different colors, CMYK can pretty much create all of those visible colors. So what you'll get is, you'll do the same thing that I said with the film and shooting films, but what they would do is, someone who's more of an expert would be able to take that photo file, that photograph, and be able to separate. It's called a color separation. They would separate out that photograph into the cyan, the magenta, the yellow, and the black films, and then you would see a CMYK version of that in your silk screen as well. And then again, when they go down to, they would take this, and then they would do the cyan, then put the magenta, and you have to line it up perfectly. I mean, super perfect. If it's not perfect, it starts to look like a 3D photo where like, it tries to be 3D. Then you do the magenta, then you move that, and then you do the yellow, and then you move that, and then you do the black, and then boom, you've got a photo print. So there's a couple of other different processes that I'll show you too. There is the humble airbrush. And airbrushing is great because it's like the kissing cousin of graffiti and spray paint. And a lot of graffiti artists who are used to using spray cans love airbrush because it's kind of the same technique, but you could get it on a shirt and get it to stay on a shirt. So this was really popular like in the 80s and 90s. From a trend standpoint, it's not so popular now. It also doesn't hold up to time very well. So there's no way to really bake this in. It's almost like a piece of artwork on, cotton, if you will. A very popular way is heat transfers. So heat transfers, you might have remembered this, it's very similar to how you put a patch onto a pair of jeans. It's essentially artwork with glue on the back, and then you hit it with some sort of a heater or even an iron, to be honest. The glue melts onto the shirt, and then your design is sitting on the garment. So this is an example of a staple pigeon shirt that's been transferred, heat transferred. So heat transfers are great. The pros of heat transfer are the minimums are super low. You can make one at a time. Whereas on silk screening, it doesn't really benefit to make one silk screen shirt at a time. In general, you really have to make around 70 minimum for silk screening to be cost effective because there's an upfront charge in shooting the screen. So to make the screen, it might cost $100 or $200 depending on where you go. So it doesn't make sense to make a $100 screen to make one t-shirt, With heat transfer, because each of these things are made individually, you can make one t-shirt at a time with heat transfer. The downfall of heat transfer is if you want to make 100 shirts or 1,000 shirts, it doesn't get any cheaper because you can't really automate the heat transfer process. It's still, someone has to place this down and figure it out, and then someone has to wait until it melts and then put it up. So it's a very laborious way. It also doesn't hold up nearly as well in washings. You could see even this shirt, if you get details on this, you could see it's starting to crack a little bit, which is just inherently characteristic of a heat transfer shirt. The reason why we did it, just so I can clarify why we did a heat transfer shirt, is because this is done using 3M reflective. So if I take a flash picture of this, it's like completely reflective. So reflective is really good for heat transfer. Another process that's been very popular recently is called sublimation, dye sublimation. All over print shirts have become very popular recently, and you can actually silk screen an all over print shirt. And the way that works is you have a massive silk screen and you put the whole entire shirt down, sleeves and all, neckline and all, and you just print the whole damn thing. The problem that happens is where you've got stitch points on the shirt, like where the sleeve attaches, the ink sort of bubbles and you get like ripples in the ink. It's not a smooth press. So the way around that is this process called dye sublimation, which means that this print, this photograph, is printed on the shirt before the shirt's made. It's printed as rolls. And they could get this really great photographic quality on it using dye sublimation. But with sublimation, you can't do 100% cotton sublimated shirts. There has to be some polyester in it in order for the sublimation to catch, for the image to catch. So you could do like an 80-20 cotton poly shirt, 50-50 cotton poly shirt. And some people prefer that their shirts be 100% cotton. There's like a feel for that, obviously. And some people are cool with polyester cotton shirts. The polyester cotton shirt kind of has like this sort of, I dare say, pantyhose effect to it. It's a little bit stretchy, sort of drapes on you more, almost like a Under Armour workout shirt or something like that. So some people don't like that and some people are totally cool with it. But if you want this effect where you get the entire photograph on a shirt with no bumps in the ink, no variations, sublimation is the only way to do it. The other process now that's becoming super popular is called DTG. It stands for direct to garment. Direct to garment, the easiest way to explain this is if you've ever had an inkjet printer at home, direct to garment is inkjet printing on a cotton t-shirt. So they've developed inks that run just like an inkjet printer. You hook it up to a computer, you've got your file, whatever you want, and you literally hit Command P, print, you put your shirt in and it prints one at a time. So pros and cons of direct to garment are very much similar to heat transfer. If you're doing really low quantities, it's really good. You could get one t-shirt made for $20. But the more you do, it doesn't matter. It doesn't get any cheaper. It continues to be the same price. So it's not cost effective if you're doing high volume. But the quality is actually much better than heat transfer. So most people can't even discern the difference between direct-to-garment and silkscreen shirts. So that's the advantage of going DTG. And quite honestly, a lot of upstart brands now are using DTG because there's very little investment. They could try to make 12 shirts for their homies, and you know, it might cost 20 bucks a shirt, which is kind of expensive. A silkscreen shirt might only cost you like $5 or $6. A direct-to-garment might cost you $15, $20 each, but you can make only 12, and you could just see what people, you know, react to those first 12 shirts without a huge investment. So direct-to-garment's getting really popular for that. The other way, which is a little less popular, is embroidery, and I'm wearing an embroidered t-shirt right now. So this pigeon has been stitched onto this shirt with an embroidery machine. Embroidery is, I would call it fancy. You know, like I don't think many people have entire t-shirt lines based on embroidered shirts because it's really expensive. Also, the back of embroidered shirts have like this sort of like, you could feel the threading on it. And because t-shirts are typically worn right up against your skin, you don't want to necessarily feel that stitching and that threading all over on your body. So that's why even on this shirt, I did it on the pocket so that you wouldn't feel the stitching. But embroidery is definitely a nice way to do little details on t-shirts. So now let's go into some of the different t-shirts.